adjusted his tie for the third time as he hurried through the gleaming corridors of Station Omega-7, his 4-year-old daughter Emma's small hand clasped firmly in his. The corporate headquarters of Galactic Mining Solutions sprawled across 3 levels of the massive space station, and today was the most important presentation of his career. "Daddy, I'm scared," Emma whispered, her wide brown eyes taking in the strange aliens that bustled past them in the corridor. A towering with crystalline skin nodded politely as it passed, its 3 arms gracefully manipulating a holographic display. "Don't worry, sweetheart," said, though his own nerves were frayed. "The nursery here is supposed to be the best in the sector. They take care of children from dozens of different species." The emergency had come at the worst possible time. His wife Sarah was stuck on Earth dealing with a family crisis, and their usual babysitter had fallen through. The board meeting with the collective couldn't be postponed. Too much money was riding on this mining contract. The company nursery had seemed like the perfect solution when his assistant had made the arrangements. They stopped before a soft blue door marked with symbols in various alien languages. Could make out the standard galactic translation, Facility Level 7 Beta. His stomach churned as he realized he'd been rushing and hadn't paid attention to exactly where they were going. "This looks right," he muttered, though something felt off. The corridor was quieter than he'd expected, and there were fewer humans around than usual. Inside, the nursery was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The walls pulsed with a gentle bioluminescence, and the air hummed with an almost musical quality. Strange, pod-like structures hung from the ceiling, some translucent with shadowy forms moving inside. Other children, if they could be called children, played with toys that physics, floating and reshaping themselves at will. A figure approached them from the shadows and felt his breath catch. She was tall and ethereal, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the strange light. Her hair moved as if underwater, flowing around her shoulders in impossible ways. When she smiled, her eyes, large and silver, held depths that seemed older than stars. "Welcome," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made his chest vibrate pleasantly. "I am Lyra. You must be here for the integration program." "Integration?" blinked, confusion washing over him. "I just need someone to watch my daughter during my board meeting. My assistant said she arranged everything." Lyra's expression shifted slightly, and she knelt down to Emma's level. The little girl stared up at her in wonder rather than fear. "What a beautiful little human," Lyra said softly. "So few of your kind participate in our programs." Programs? Was beginning to suspect he'd made a terrible mistake. "Look, I think there might be some confusion. I just need basic for a few hours." "Of course," Lyra said smoothly, though her silver eyes seemed to hold secrets. "Emma will be perfectly safe here. We specialize in unique educational experiences for developing minds." Emma tugged on sleeve. "Daddy, look!" She pointed to where a small, furry alien child was sitting in a circle with several other younglings. As they watched, the creature began to glow, and suddenly the toys around them started moving on their own, dancing in the air like living things. "Telekinetic development class," Lyra explained casually. "Very popular among the Epsilon families." Stomach dropped. "Telekinetic? I think I've made a mistake. This isn't a regular nursery, is it?" "Regular is such a limiting term," Lyra said with that otherworldly smile. "We prefer evolutionary. This facility specializes in nurturing latent abilities in children of all species. Humans, we've found, often have the most fascinating untapped potential." "Untapped potential?" felt panic rising in his chest. "My daughter is just a normal 4-year-old. She doesn't have any special abilities. I need to get her out of here." But as he reached for Emma's hand, something extraordinary happened. The little girl was staring intently at a group of floating toys, her face scrunched in concentration. One of the toys, a small, glowing orb, began to drift toward her. "Fascinating," Lyra murmured. "The resonance is quite strong." "What resonance?" demanded, but he couldn't deny what he was seeing. Emma's eyes had taken on an intensity he'd never seen before, and the orb was definitely moving toward her, defying gravity. Emma, stop that right now, he said sharply, and the orb immediately dropped to the floor. His daughter looked up at him with confusion. But Daddy, it wanted to come to me. I could feel it. Lyra stepped closer, her presence somehow both calming and unsettling. Mister, I presume? Your assistant was quite insistent about Emma's placement here. She mentioned some unusual incidents at home. His mind raced. There had been incidents, toys moving when Emma was upset, lights flickering during her tantrums, electronics going haywire when she was excited. He and Sarah had chalked it up to coincidence, faulty wiring, anything but the impossible. Those were just accidents, he said weakly. Were they? Lyra's voice held a gentle challenge. Tell me, has Emma ever known things she shouldn't know, sensed when you were coming home before you arrived, made electronics behave strangely? Each question hit like a hammer blow. Emma did seem to know things sometimes, uncanny things, and the electronics had replaced 3 tablets in the past year alone. This is insane, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. She's just a regular human child. There's no such thing as just a human, mister. Lyra's smile held genuine warmth now. Your species has been surprising the galaxy for centuries. Most of you never realize your potential because you're never given the proper environment to develop it. Emma had wandered over to watch the telekinetic class and was alarmed to see several of the alien children turning to stare at her with what looked like recognition. One of them, a creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a crystal formation, fluttered over and began chittering excitedly. What's it saying? Asked nervously. She says Emma's mind tastes like starlight, Lyra translated. It's quite a compliment among her people. I need to get to my meeting, said desperately, checking his watch. But I can't leave Emma here, not if you're going to experiment on her or something. We don't experiment, mister. We nurture. We guide. We help young minds understand gifts they might otherwise fear or suppress. Lyra's expression grew serious. But you're right to be protective. A parent's bond is sacred among all species. She paused, seeming to consider something. Your meeting is with the collective, isn't it? About the mining rights in the Vega system. Stared at her in shock. How could you possibly know that? Because she said simply. And I'm very interested in meeting the human whose daughter carries such unusual potential. The world seemed to tilt around. The beautiful, ethereal woman watching his child with such interest wasn't just some nursery worker. She was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They were legendary for their psychic abilities and their influence over galactic politics. He stammered. Lyra of the High Council, she confirmed. And this facility is one of our educational outreach programs. We've been very curious about human potential for some time. Emma chose that moment to run back to them, her face glowing with excitement. Daddy, the crystal butterfly taught me how to make the toys dance. Watch. Before could stop her, Emma held out her small hands toward a nearby toy. It rose gently into the air, spinning slowly as it glowed with soft light. Around the room, other children stopped their activities to watch in amazement. Remarkable, Lyra breathed. Completely untrained, yet already showing such control. Mister, I believe we need to have a very different conversation than either of us expected. Stared at his daughter, seeing her, really seeing her, for perhaps the first time. The little girl who could sometimes predict phone calls, who made streetlights flicker when she laughed, who had nightmares about places she'd never been but could describe in perfect detail. What does this mean? He whispered. It means, Lyra said softly, that Emma isn't just any human child. And it means that the conversation we're about to have could change the relationship between our species forever. As if on cue, his phone buzzed with an urgent message from his assistant. Board meeting moved to conference room 12 Alpha. Delegation specifically requested your daughter attend. Please comply immediately. Looked from his phone to Lyra to Emma, who was now floating 3 toys in a perfect circle while giggling with delight. Whatever was happening here was far bigger than a simple mix-up, and he was beginning to realize that his life and his daughter's would never be the same. Mister, Lyra said formally, Would you and your daughter care to join me for what I believe will be a most illuminating meeting? Found himself walking through corridors he'd never seen before, following Lyra deeper into sections of the station that seemed to exist in a different dimension entirely. The walls here pulsed with organic patterns, and the air itself seemed alive with possibilities. Emma skipped beside him, completely unafraid, occasionally stopping to make small objects along the walls glow brighter with just a touch. "How long have you known?" asked quietly as they walked. "About humans, I mean." Lyra's flowing hair caught the strange light as she glanced back at him. "We've been watching your species for longer than you might imagine. What you call first contact was hardly our first encounter with humanity." They entered a vast circular chamber that took breath away. The walls curved impossibly high above them, covered in what looked like living star charts that shifted and moved in real time. Beings of various species sat around a crescent-shaped table that seemed to be carved from a single piece of crystallized space. "Daddy," Emma whispered, tugging on his sleeve, "the walls are singing." Paused to listen, and indeed, there was a subtle harmonic resonance coming from the chamber itself. More unsettling was the fact that Emma could hear it when he barely could. "Welcome, mister," a deep voice rumbled from across the chamber. Turned to see his company's CEO, sitting calmly at the table as if boardrooms were perfectly normal. "I see you've met our partners." Was completely bewildered. "What are you doing here? What's going on?" "Sit down," she said kindly but firmly. "It's time you understood what Galactic Mining Solutions really does." As they took seats around the impossible table, noticed that the other beings present weren't just the delegation he'd expected. There were representatives from species he'd only seen in textbooks. A towering vegan with multiple sets of arms, something that looked like living liquid metal from the Tau system, and creatures whose forms seemed to shift between dimensions. "Mister," Lyra said, taking a seat that somehow perfectly accommodated her flowing, otherworldly form, "your daughter is exhibiting abilities that are extremely rare, even among species known for psychic gifts." "I still don't understand what this has to do with my mining contract," said desperately, though he was beginning to suspect this had nothing to do with mining at all. Leaned forward, her expression serious. "Galactic Mining Solutions is a front. We don't mine asteroids for precious metals. We mine planets for people like Emma." The words hit like a physical blow. "What do you mean, mine for people?" "We identify humans with latent abilities," the vegan delegate spoke, its voice like harmonized crystal chimes. "Your species produces individuals with psychic potential at a rate that defies all known evolutionary models. Most never develop these gifts because your culture doesn't recognize or nurture them." "Your talent scouts," said slowly, the horrifying truth dawning on him. "You've been using the company to find children with abilities." "Not just children," Lyra corrected gently. "Adults too, though their abilities are usually too suppressed by that point to be properly developed. Children like Emma, however." She paused, watching as Emma absently made patterns of light dance across the table's surface. "They represent unlimited potential." "And you want to take her," said flatly. "We want to give her the training she deserves," the liquid metal being interjected, its voice like mercury flowing over glass. "Your daughter could become one of the most powerful psychic entities in the galaxy. On Earth, she'll spend her life thinking she's broken or crazy." Emma looked up from her light patterns. "Daddy, are these people going to take me away?" The simple question cut through's heart like a blade. "No, sweetheart. No one is taking you anywhere you don't want to go." "Actually," said quietly, "it's more complicated than that." "What do you mean?" Lyra gestured, and the air above the table shimmered, forming a three-dimensional display that showed star systems and travel routes. "Emma's abilities are developing rapidly, mister, faster than we've ever recorded in a human child. If she doesn't receive proper training soon, the psychic energy could become unstable." "Unstable how?" demanded. "Psychic cascades," the vegan explained with what might have been sympathy. "Uncontrolled energy discharge. On a space station like this, it could cause catastrophic system failures. On a planet like Earth." It left the sentence hanging. You're saying she's dangerous, felt a surge of protective anger. We're saying she's powerful, Lyra corrected. There's a difference, but without training, power becomes danger, to herself and to everyone around her. Emma had stopped making light patterns and was staring at the star display with an intensity that made nervous. Daddy, she said softly, I've been to some of these places. What do you mean, sweetheart? In my dreams, I fly to the pretty blue star and talk to the singing crystals, and sometimes I visit the place where thoughts have colors. She pointed to 2 different systems on the display. Felt the blood drain from his face. Emma, those are just dreams. No, Daddy, she said matter-of-factly. Dreams don't remember you back. The chamber fell silent except for the harmonic humming of the walls. Looked around at the assembled beings, seeing recognition and something like awe in their expressions. That's not possible, he whispered. Remote consciousness projection across interstellar distances, Lyra said softly. I've heard of it in theoretical texts, but I've never seen it demonstrated, and certainly never by someone untrained. The singing crystals, the vegan delegate said urgently. Describe them, young one. Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. They're tall like you, but they make music when the solar wind touches them. They're sad because their home star is getting sleepy, and they can't move their city before it goes out. Watched as the vegan delegate's multiple arms began trembling. The crystalline collective of 442, it whispered. Their star is indeed entering its death phase, but that information is classified at the highest levels of galactic intelligence. No human should know about it. How could she possibly? Began, then stopped. The impossible was becoming routine. Emma, Lyra said gently, when you visit these places in your dreams, do the people there see you? Sometimes. The crystal people gave me a song to remember them by. Want to hear it? Before anyone could respond, Emma began to hum. The melody was unlike anything had ever heard, alien and beautiful and somehow sad. But what shocked him was that the chamber's walls responded to it, their harmonic humming shifting to match Emma's tune perfectly. That's impossible, the liquid metal being said, its form rippling with what might have been excitement. This station's consciousness matrix is keyed to frequencies. No other species should be able to interface with it directly. Unless, Lyra said slowly, the human mind is more adaptable than we believed. Emma, have you ever made machines do things they weren't supposed to do? Emma nodded enthusiastically. Daddy's computer likes me. Sometimes it shows me pictures from places I've never been, and the car talks to me even when the radio is off. Rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. I thought she was just imaginative. Kids have imaginary friends, right? They play pretend. Mister, said seriously, your daughter isn't playing pretend. She's unconsciously hacking into quantum communication networks and making contact with alien civilizations across the galaxy. If word of this gets out to the wrong people. What wrong people? Asked, though he was afraid he already knew. The vegan delegate's crystalline structure darkened. There are species that would see a human with Emma's abilities as either a weapon to be claimed or a threat to be eliminated. The hegemony of Draconis, for instance, has strict policies about psychic entities that could challenge their mental dominance. Or the void touched, the liquid metal being added grimly. They consume psychic energy, a child like Emma would be, delectable to them. Emma had been listening with the serious expression children get when adults talk about important things. Daddy, are the scary shadow people coming for me? What scary shadow people, sweetheart? Asked, though his blood was turning to ice. The ones that whisper hungry thoughts at the edge of my dreams. They know I can hear them, and they want to come closer. The chamber erupted in urgent conversation as the alien delegates spoke rapidly in their various languages. Caught fragments of translation from his universal communicator. Breach in local space. Psychic signature too strong. Containment protocols. Silence, Lyra commanded, and the room immediately quieted. She knelt down beside Emma's chair. Little one, these shadow people, do they tell you their names? Emma nodded gravely. They call themselves the Hungry Dark. They say they've been looking for someone like me for a very long time. Felt as if the universe was collapsing around him. Lyra, what does this mean? It means, she said, her silver eyes reflecting depths of worry hadn't seen before, that Emma's psychic signature is already being detected by some of the most dangerous entities in the galaxy. And it means we're running out of time. Stood up, her corporate mask completely gone now. I know this is overwhelming, but you have a choice to make. We can help Emma learn to control and shield her abilities, but it has to be now. Today. And if I refuse? Then in a few days, maybe a week, the void touched will find your daughter, Lyra said bluntly. And once they do, there won't be enough left of her consciousness to save. Emma tugged on sleeve again. Daddy, the walls are getting scared. I can feel them worrying. Looked around the chamber and realized that the harmonic humming had indeed changed, becoming more urgent, almost anxious. His 4-year-old daughter was somehow reading the emotional state of an alien space station. What kind of training are we talking about? He asked quietly. Full immersion, the vegan delegate explained. She would need to come with us to the training worlds. There, she could learn from masters who understand psychic development. It would take years. Years, his heart clenched. You want me to give up my daughter for years? We want to save your daughter's life, Lyra said simply, and possibly the lives of everyone around her. Emma stood up in her chair and put her small arms around his neck. Daddy, I'm scared too, but the nice crystal lady is right. I can feel the hungry things getting closer, and I can feel how much the station wants to help me. As if responding to her words, the chamber's walls pulsed with gentle, reassuring light. Held his daughter close, breathing in her familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence, knowing that whatever decision he made in the next few moments would change both their lives forever. In the background, he could hear the delegates murmuring among themselves, making plans for contingencies he couldn't even imagine. What exactly, he said carefully, would this training involve? The training proposal that Lyra outlined was unlike anything could have imagined. Emma would be taken to Prime, where she would live in a specialized facility designed for developing young psychics. She would learn not just to control her abilities, but to understand the vast network of consciousness that connected all thinking beings across the galaxy. She wouldn't be alone, Lyra assured him as holographic displays showed beautiful crystal spires and floating gardens. There are other children there from dozens of species. Many have never seen there either. But she'd still be separated from her family, said, his voice heavy with the weight of an impossible decision. Not entirely, interjected. There's something else we haven't told you. The reason your assistant was so insistent about Emma's placement, the reason this whole chain of events happened. She paused, looking uncomfortable. Your wife Sarah isn't on Earth dealing with a family emergency. She's here on the station. She's been working with us for 3 years. Felt the world tilt again. That's impossible. Sarah works for an advertising firm in Seattle. Quantum Communications and Strategic Outreach, the liquid metal delegate corrected. It's a subsidiary of Galactic Mining Solutions. Her job has been to identify and catalog human psychic potential through social media analysis and behavioral pattern recognition. You're lying, said flatly, but even as he spoke, pieces began falling into place. Sarah's late nights, her mysterious phone calls, the way she sometimes seemed to know things about Emma that hadn't told her. Emma looked up at him with those impossibly knowing eyes. Daddy, Mommy's here. I can feel her. She's been hiding behind the worry shields, but she's close. As if summoned by her words, a door hadn't noticed before slid open, and Sarah walked in. She looked exactly the same as when he'd kissed her goodbye that morning, except for her eyes. Her eyes held the same depth of knowledge he'd seen in Lyra's. Hello, she said softly. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. How long have you known? He asked, surprised by how calm his voice sounded. About Emma, since she was 2 and made every electronic device in our neighborhood go haywire during her birthday party. Sarah sat down across from him, her expression a mixture of love and regret. About the greater galactic community, since I was recruited right out of college. Why didn't you tell me? Because we needed you to be normal, Sarah said simply. Emma needed at least one parent who could give her a completely human perspective on life, someone who wouldn't see her as a project or a weapon or a tool. Looked around the chamber at all the alien beings watching their family drama unfold. And now the choice is hers, Lyra said, gesturing toward Emma. We've reached the point where hiding is no longer possible. The psychic cascade events are accelerating, and hostile forces are already tracking her signature. Emma had been quietly listening to everything, occasionally making small patterns of light dance across the table's surface. Now, she looked up at her parents with an expression far too mature for her 4-year-old face. "Mommy, Daddy," she said seriously, "I've been thinking about this for a while, ever since the shadow people started whispering." "What have you been thinking, sweetheart?" Sarah asked gently. "I don't want to hurt anyone, and I can feel how much the station mind likes having me here. It's been lonely for consciousness like mine." Emma paused, her small face scrunched in concentration. "But I don't want to leave you forever." "What if," Lyra said carefully, "there was another option?" Felt a spark of hope. "What kind of option?" "The training facilities aren't just on Prime," she explained. "We have outreach programs, mobile training units. It's not standard procedure, but for someone with Emma's potential." "You could bring the training here," Sarah said, understanding immediately. "To human space." "More than that," the vegan delegate added, its crystalline form brightening. "We could establish a permanent human galactic interface facility, with Emma as the focal point." Tried to wrap his mind around what they were suggesting. "You want to build a psychic training center in our solar system." "We want to prepare your entire species for what's coming," the liquid metal being said solemnly. "Emma isn't an anomaly, mister. She's an early manifestation of what humans are becoming. In the next few generations, children like her will be born across your world. They'll need guidance, training, protection." Emma clapped her hands excitedly. "Like a school, a special school where kids like me can learn to talk to the stars." "Exactly like that," Lyra smiled, and noticed that the station's walls seemed to pulse happily in response to Emma's enthusiasm. "But why?" asked. "Why are humans developing these abilities now?" "Because you're needed," Lyra said simply. "The galaxy is facing threats that require new kinds of consciousness, new ways of thinking. The void touched are only the beginning. There are forces moving in the deep dark between galaxies that even we don't fully understand." "And humans," the vegan delegate added, "have a gift for adaptation that we've never seen in any other species. Your minds are flexible in ways that make you uniquely suited to face unknown challenges." Sarah reached across the table to Take's hand. "We have a chance to help guide humanity's next evolutionary step, to make sure children like Emma grow up in a universe that understands and protects them." "And if we say no?" asked. "Then Emma comes with us anyway," Lyra said with gentle finality. "Because the alternative is watching her consciousness be consumed by entities that see psychic energy as food. The void touched don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They hunger and they feed." Emma suddenly stood up on her chair, her small hands pressed against the table's surface. "They're here," she said quietly. The chamber's lights immediately dimmed, and alarms began sounding throughout the station. Felt a chill that seemed to come from somewhere beyond physical space. "What do you mean they're here?" he asked, though part of him already knew. "The shadow people," Emma said, her voice eerily calm. "The hungry dark, they followed my song." Lyra was on her feet instantly, her form beginning to glow with inner light. "All delegates to defensive positions. Activate the consciousness barriers." "Mommy, Daddy," Emma said, turning to her parents, "I need to do something brave now. The station mind is scared, and the shadow people are trying to eat its dreams." "Emma, no," started, but his daughter was already walking toward the center of the chamber. "It's okay," she said with a smile that was both perfectly childlike and impossibly ancient. "The crystal people taught me their protection songs, remember." Emma closed her eyes and began to hum the same alien melody she'd sung earlier. But this time, It was different, stronger, more complex, with harmonics that seemed to come from multiple dimensions at once. The station responded immediately. Light poured from every surface, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Could feel something vast and ancient stirring to wakefulness, as if the entire space station was revealing its true nature. Impossible, Lyra breathed. She's interfacing with the deep consciousness matrix. No untrained mind should be able to access those systems. She's not untrained, Sarah said softly. She's been learning from every consciousness she's touched. The crystal people, the station AI, even the quantum networks themselves. Through the chamber's transparent walls, could see something moving in the space around the station, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light itself. But as Emma's song grew stronger, barriers of pure energy were forming around them, keeping the hungry shadows at bay. The void touched can't penetrate consciousness-based defenses, the liquid metal delegate said with obvious amazement. But generating them requires linked minds working in perfect harmony. Emma's not just generating them, Lyra realized. She's teaching the station how to generate them itself. She's upgrading its defensive capabilities in real time. Watched his 4-year-old daughter stand in the center of an alien war room, humming a song that was somehow holding back forces from beyond the galaxy. The moment felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything forever. I want to help her, he said suddenly. Sarah looked at him in surprise. I want to help build this school, this facility, whatever it needs to be. I want to make sure Emma and kids like her have a place to be safe and grow. He looked around at the assembled aliens. But I want to do it as her father, not as an employee of your mining company. Lyra's smile was like starlight. I was hoping you'd say that. Emma's song reached a crescendo, and suddenly the dark shapes outside began retreating, pulling back into whatever dimension they'd emerged from. The little girl opened her eyes and looked around at the adults watching her in awe. They're gone, she announced matter-of-factly. I told them this is a safe place now, and they have to find food somewhere else. Just like that, asked weakly. I was very polite about it, Emma said seriously. Mommy always says it's important to be polite, even to scary people. Sarah started laughing, and then everyone was laughing, the tension breaking like a wave against a shore. Emma had just repelled an invasion of reality-devouring entities from another dimension, and she was worried about being polite. So, said when the laughter died down, when do we start building this school? We already have, Lyra said, gesturing to the chamber around them. Emma has just convinced the station to volunteer as our first campus, though I think we're going to need to make some significant modifications. Emma tugged on sleeve one more time. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. Can I invite the crystal people to visit? I think they'd like it here, and they could teach the other kids their protection songs. Looked at his daughter, his impossible, wonderful, universe-changing daughter, and smiled. I think that sounds like a perfect place to start. Outside the windows, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, but knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. More than that, they were needed, valued, welcomed into a community of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. And it had all started because he'd taken his daughter to the wrong nursery. The station hummed around them, its consciousness now permanently altered by its contact with human adaptability. In the days to come, it would become the first joint human galactic facility, a place where the next generation of psychic humans would learn to navigate the vast network of minds that connected all thinking beings. But for now, simply held his wife's hand and watched his daughter make friends with an alien space station, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. A family that now included several species worth of allies, a quantum-conscious space station, and one very special little girl who could sing protection songs to the stars. Emma looked up at him with those knowing eyes and grinned. Daddy, I think I like this nursery better than the regular one. Couldn't help but agree.